Now let's begin. Let's take a closer look at the basic components of SafwaySystem scaffolding. Tubular screw jacks for leveling the scaffold, starter collars, vertical posts, which feature double snap buttons for positive interlocking. Safway's ring set design allows horizontal and diagonal members to attach to the ring set anywhere along a full 360 degree around the vertical post. Bearers are load-carrying members and are available in various lengths up to 5 feet. When a bearer is required to span a distance greater than 5 feet, SafwaySystem's horizontal truss bearers must be used. Runners are not load-bearing members. They are framing members only and are available in various lengths up to 10 feet. Both bearers and runners feature double grip end connectors for secure attachment to the post. The Safway wedge and locking mechanism assures positive attachment of systems, components, and each horizontal member is labeled with installation and removal instructions. Vertical and horizontal diagonals are used for bracing. SafwaySystem steel planks and Safway DuraPlank provide reliable footing for platform construction. The Safway pry-bar hammer is specifically designed for SafwaySystem scaffolding. Changes to the scaffold can only be properly done using the pry-bar hammer. Other devices could damage the locking retainer and prevent wedge removal. Now that you have seen the basic building blocks and tools of SafwaySystem scaffolding, let's look at some of the points covered in the job site inspection. To begin with, the person who inspects the job site must be qualified to do so. That's because the information gathered will be used to determine the scaffold requirements. At a minimum, the investigation should include the type and condition of the surface upon which the scaffold will rest, weather conditions during erection and while the scaffold is in use, likelihood of pedestrian and vehicular traffic in the vicinity of the scaffold, overhead and electrical obstructions, the weight of the scaffold plus the load to be put on it, and the method of fall protection best suited to erect the scaffold. It is the competent person's responsibility to determine the feasibility and safety of providing fall protection for those erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds. Before erecting your scaffold, always inspect the job site to evaluate the possible fall arrest anchorage locations capable of supporting a 5,000-pound shock force. If suitable anchorages are not available and one cannot be readily installed without creating a greater hazard to the workers, a job-specific fall plan must be developed, reviewed, and followed while erecting the scaffold. This plan should include all persons expected to be on the scaffold during the erection or dismantling phase. Scaffolds must be designed and erected to support at least 4 times the maximum intended load. Scaffolds to be erected higher than 125 feet must be designed by a registered professional engineer. Simpler scaffolds may not require a drawing. However, it is recommended that drawings or sketches be made for most scaffolds. When drawings are needed, they are based on your requirements, the information obtained from the job site inspection, and on component SafwaySystem's technical information available from Safway. Now that the drawings, if required, are complete, you're ready for pre-erection checks. Begin by reviewing the scaffolding plan, double-checking the dimensions with the components that will be required. Carefully inspect every component to ensure that none of them are broken, cracked, distorted, or damaged in any way. Tag and remove from use any damaged parts from the job site so that no one can mistakenly use them. Metal hook-on scaffold plank is normally used with SafwaySystem scaffold. However, if solid sawn lumber is used for planking, it must be graded for use as scaffold plank. Prior to use, inspect each plank carefully and remove any plank containing defects such as saw cuts, notches, dry rot, splits, discoloration, chemical or acid contamination, or those previously used as sills. The Scaffold Industry Association Handbook for inspecting solid sawn wood plank can also be used for reference. Finally, make sure that the erectors are wearing the proper personal protective equipment. The Safeway Fall Protection Plan has been designed to enable Safeway employees to recognize the fall hazards on the job and establish the procedures to follow in order to prevent falls. If you are not a Safeway employee and do not have a plan of your own, follow the directions given by the competent person who evaluated the job. We'll have more in a few moments. When a bearer is required to span a distance greater than 5 feet, what must be used? SafwaySystem's horizontal truss bearers must be used when a bearer is required to span a distance greater than 5 feet. A SafwaySystem scaffold must be able to support how many times the maximum intended load? It must be able to support at least 4 times the maximum intended load. The standard key components of SafwaySystem scaffolding include tubular screw jacks, starter collars, vertical posts which feature double snap buttons, and horizontal members are the standard key components of SafwaySystem scaffolding. We're now ready to begin erecting the scaffold. Begin by nailing the screw jacks to the sills. Make sure the base plate is centered on the sill. Then, refer to the scaffolding plan and mark the positions for the mud sills by laying out the proper size bearers and runners on the ground. Check with a competent person for specific instructions. Varying ground conditions may require various size pads or sills to support the load. The sills should be level and in full contact with the supporting surface. To begin erecting the scaffold, start at the highest ground level. Place the system's screw jack at the approximate position where the scaffolding will be erected. Preset the screw jacks to the desired height, not closer than 1 inch from the base. Next, place system's starter collars onto the screw jacks. Starter collars are typically the first vertical components placed. Install the base horizontals, positioning their double grip end connectors on the bottom ring sets. Manually engage each wedge, but do not drive it home yet. Starting at the high end and moving clockwise, you will be rotating the screw jack to adjust the collar height. Assume the high-end starter collar is your standard. Do not adjust it. Move to the second starter collar. Place a level on the horizontal between the first and second starter collar. Adjust the second screw jack until the horizontal is level. If squaring is a necessary condition of bay erection, use the system's horizontal squaring tool or a horizontal diagonal to square the scaffold. Repeat the leveling process on the remaining horizontal members. Drive the locking wedges home after each base horizontal member is leveled. Be certain each locking retainer drops, locking the wedges in place. Once the base is completed, there is no need to level or measure the rest of the scaffold during the erection process. Place vertical posts onto the starter collars. With Safway, there are no indexes to line up. Squeeze snap buttons in, slide down, and twist. That's it. The vertical members are now locked in place. Install at least 2 scaffold grade or metal work planks on the scaffold deck on the base level bearers. This will help make working on the next level easier and faster. Counting up a maximum of 4 ring sets, the next level of horizontal runners and bearers are installed. Working from below and within the scaffold, drive each wedge home until the locking retainer drops, securing the wedge. Set the wedges before releasing the horizontal. Always immediately secure both wedges once the horizontal is placed on the ring set to avoid accidental dislodging. Never leave a horizontal resting on a ring set without making sure both wedges are securely fastened to the ring set to prevent a fall that could result in serious injury should someone grab onto it. At this point, vertical diagonals must be installed. The top wedge is secured first, then the bottom. Be sure to drive the wedges home until the locking retainers drop. Now, planks for the next deck level are placed. When using planks, make sure the planks span across a minimum of 2 scaffold bearers. Scaffold planks must also extend at least 6 inches, but no more than 12 inches beyond their supports when the platform is 10 feet or less in length, or 18 inches when the platform is greater than 10 feet long. Planks extending less than 6 inches over their supports must be cleated or restrained from movement. When installing lapped planks, the planks must only be lapped over a support, and each plank must overlap the other by at least 12 inches. Never overlap plank in any other location. Make sure that once the planks or decks are in place that they are secured to the scaffold to prevent uplift. A proper means of access must now be provided. One means of reaching the upper deck levels is by using an access ladder attached to the vertical posts. Attach the access ladder to the vertical post using 2 SAUB brackets on the bottom section. Provide platform entrances using SafwaySystem guardrail gates. If the scaffold is higher than 35 feet, you must install rest platforms adjacent to the ladder at vertical intervals of not more than 35 feet. Rest platforms must be fully planked and guarded. The same assembly procedures are used to increase scaffold height. Additional vertical posts are placed. The required guardrails and midrails are locked into place at each deck level, and the next level horizontals and vertical diagonals are installed. Be certain the locking retainer drops as each wedge is hammered into place. Be sure the toe boards are installed when required. Now, place the next deck level planking. Notice again that all work is performed from below and within the scaffold. Install another access ladder section at this time. Only 1 bracket per ladder section is needed. This bracket should be put near the top of each ladder section. We'll be back with more in a few moments. When are the locking wedges on base horizontals driven home? After each base horizontal is leveled. When building a scaffold, where is all of the work performed? All work is performed from below and within the scaffold. If installing a scaffold access ladder, at what vertical intervals must rest platforms be installed? Install rest platforms at vertical intervals of not more than 35 feet apart. Now that you are familiar with SafwaySystem scaffold components and basic erection procedures, let's move into our next topic, multiple bays and stair tower erection. Multiple bay or a run of scaffold bays are easily erected. The same basic procedures using SafwaySystem scaffolding components are repeated. With the base leveled and squared, erectors can move right through. If the scaffold can't be erected within reach of the work surface, side brackets are available to widen the work surface. When side brackets are used, engineered scaffold ties, standoffs, or guy wires may be required to stabilize the scaffold at the first platform level to prevent it from tipping over. The erection procedures are repeated for the next level. Stair towers are erected using SafwaySystem scaffold components. First, position the screw jacks and starter collars. Next, select the proper length bearers for the desired stair width and put them into position. Now, install 7-foot runners, followed by the horizontal diagonals. These will square the bay and ensure that the stair units will fit properly. Adjust the screw jack to level the structure, then drive the locking wedges home. Vertical posts are installed on top of the starter collars. The second level horizontals and a horizontal diagonal are placed and locked into position. The diagonal is placed in the bay which will not contain the stair units. If brackets are to be used for the landings, install one vertical diagonal on the end of the stair tower opposite the base landing. If legs are to be used to support the landings, install two vertical diagonals per lift, one on each end of the stair tower. The stair units are set in. The handrails are installed. Vertical diagonals are used for this purpose. A landing may be required at the base of the stair units. The same procedures are repeated as the next level is erected. Install platform planks perpendicular to the stair to assure proper fit. Stair fillers are placed at the top and bottom of the stair runs. Stair fillers are installed by tipping them down, sliding them over a plank edge, and inserting the flange portion of the filler into the stair bearer support end connectors. Circular scaffold erection is done using standard system components. Because of Safeway's ring set design, the runners and bearers of the scaffold can be positioned at various radius angles to accommodate the trapezoid shape of the individual bays. Tubes and clamps are used to complete the circle if standard systems components do not allow an exact matchup with the diameter of the circular structure being surrounded. The next element of SafwaySystem scaffold erection is bracing, tying, and guying. Standoffs, ties, and guys are installed to prevent the scaffold from tipping into or away from a structure being scaffolded. Federal OSHA requires that they shall be installed on all scaffolds when the height to minimum base, length or width, dimensions ratio exceed 4:1. In some states, like California, this height to base ratio is 3:1. Freestanding single bay towers require vertical diagonals on all faces. Freestanding multiple bay scaffolds require vertical diagonals across the run at the end bays and every fourth bay in between. Tied single bay scaffolds require vertical diagonals on the outside face only. Tied multi-bay scaffolds require vertical diagonals at the end bays and at least every fifth bay in between. Circular structures should be braced with vertical diagonals at every other bay on scaffolds with 8 or less bays and every third bay on scaffolds with 9 or more bays. The braces must oppose those used in the previously braced bay. The first vertical ties are installed on the system's vertical post at a horizontal member just below the 4:1 height to base ratio, after which the scaffold must be tied every 20 feet vertically if the scaffold is 3 feet or less in width, and every 26 feet vertically if it is wider than 3 feet. Install a top tie at the top platform whenever possible. When not possible, install this tie no further from the top than 4 times the minimum scaffold length or width dimension, 3 times in California. Ties should be installed as the scaffold is erected and placed on the post as close to the horizontal as possible. These ties should be placed at each end of the scaffold. When erecting a scaffold run, these ties must be placed at the ends of the scaffolds and no more than 30-foot horizontal intervals in between. Horizontal diagonal braces must be installed in each horizontal bay at the tie levels. If the scaffold is to be enclosed, ties will be required at more frequent intervals. Consult an engineer to determine these tie locations. Circular scaffolds erected completely around the structure may be restrained by the use of standoff bracing members. Each leg of a single bay freestanding scaffold must also be guyed or restrained at the same vertical intervals as the run-type scaffolds. Horizontal diagonals must be installed at the points where the guy wires are attached to the vertical posts. However, an engineer who understands the forces involved should design guys and their anchorages. Now that the scaffold has been erected, inspect it very carefully from bottom to top before any work is performed on it. A competent person must inspect all scaffolds and scaffold components for visible defects before each work shift and after any occurrence which could affect a scaffold's structural integrity. SafwaySystem scaffolding is designed for efficient dismantling. The pry bar end of the Safway hammer lifts the retainers, allowing easy removal of the wedges. Safway does not recommend the use of a carpenter's hammer to extract wedges. The carpenter's hammer may not lift the retainer and could jam the wedge, preventing removal. With this in mind, dismantling can begin. Prior to dismantling, a thorough inspection of the entire structure must be made to ensure that it is safe to dismantle. You may need to add parts or increase the base width of the scaffold. For instance, to stabilize the scaffold if ties were removed by the user, or to correct any unsafe condition before tearing the scaffold down. To begin dismantling, the upper level guardrail and posts are taken off. Immediately remove each component after it is loosened. This will help to avoid accidents that could cause serious bodily injury. The planking is removed. Diagonals, horizontals, and verticals are taken off. And the stair units are dismantled. When releasing wedges, insert, lift the retainer, pry, and pull. Do not remove ties until the scaffold has been dismantled to that level. Dismantling is now completed. We'll be back with a conclusion in just a few moments. The federal OSHA height-to-base ratio for the requirement of ties or guys is the requirement is 4:1. After the first vertical tie, the next levels of vertical ties must be installed every They must be installed every 20 feet vertically if the scaffold is 3 feet or less in width, and every 26 feet vertically if it is wider than 3 feet. Where must the top tie be placed? On the vertical post as close to the top platform as possible, but no lower than 4 times the minimum base dimension from the top. Who must inspect the completed scaffold? A competent person must inspect a completed scaffold before each work shift. That wraps up our program on erection of SafwaySystem scaffolding. As you can see, it is extremely flexible, allowing you to scaffold virtually any type of structure.